Started?
Yeah, I am super ready.
Oh, good, good. Well, Jesper, it's a pleasure to have you today to talk with you. It's been a long time since we've spoken, but over the years, and we've known each other for several years now,
Yeah,
and so I'm familiar with your story, your personal story a bit. But could you tell the audience how did you become a homeschooling dad? Because you were a computer guy, you were making good money working in the computer business. What made
yeah.
you switch?
Well, like many of us homeschooling husbands out there, it was my wife.
Mm, mhm. Oh,
Uh, First saw the light, and I will call it seeing the light because it's a wonderful way to live. For us, the big change in our life came because my wife had a severe cancer. She had leukemia and was around about to die back in 2010. And when you have a wife that is hospitalized for so long time, she was there for half a year, went through all the chemo and losing the hair, everything, and the fear of losing her was real and big, and the percentage that survived back then was very few. So I'm very grateful she's still here. But after that, um, we started having our kids more at home. Before that, we had them in a Waldorf institution when they were small. But when it came time to our son should start school, he didn't want to start. And that was even though we had our oldest daughter, there's a 7 year gap between those two. We had her on this wonderful private school which is based around the teaching of a French reformist called Celestine Frenet, who believes in age integrated teaching. It is more like a democratic school. The children on the Mondays decide what they want to learn, and then they evaluate themselves on the Friday. And I often, when I talk about this school, says that I actually know adults. I've worked with adults who couldn't figure out how to evaluate their own time, and they couldn't figure out to plan ahead. And this was what our daughter was learning. Our son should start in the same group as her, so it would have been a fairly homey feel, but he
mhm.
didn't want to start. And we had a friend who homeschooled. So we ended up saying yes. From my side, there was hesitation. There was also hesitation in me when our oldest daughter started this private school because I'm a child of a public school. The public school system, for me, it was like the public school system was good enough for me, so why shouldn't it be good enough for my children? You know, the whole shebang of classic dad, I would call it. And yeah, so I can go deep into the story. I can just say our son didn't want to go to school. We listened, and that's how it all started.
Uh-huh. Well, um, a lot of homeschoolers struggle with, and unschoolers, with the two-income issue. Were you a two-income family, and then did you become a single-income family? How did you make your finances work? Because you have three children, right?
We have four. One is
Four.
adult, but we travel with three. And
Mhm.
because there's a 7 year gap, to take that story very quickly, my wife was a single mom. She got our oldest when she was 23, and we met when we were 29. And the dad wasn't in the picture, so I grew into becoming the dad of our oldest, and I have been so lucky to adopt her. And she's the child I've been father for the longest, so that is really wonderful. So when we started this whole journey, it was a sliding scale, and I think it is for many. In Denmark, there's a fairly big social security and support system around the Danes and families. So when you get a child, you can go on 9 month maternity leave where you are paid by
Mhm.
the state or by one of these unions you can be part of that helps you get some money while you are on maternity leave. So from having two incomes, we have had periods where we had this support. then there was in Denmark, because we have free institutions as well. There's a very, I mean, the price that's on them doesn't cover anything. So you can get, if you take care of your child at home, you can get 1 year where you are paid to take care of your child in your home. And this is due to not having enough spaces in these public places. Then you are economically supported if you have your child at home.
Hmm.
Then we also get some money monthly just for having a child. And it's all part of this, you can call it socialist mindset that we have in Denmark, that you are, the state take care of you while you grow up to become a taxpayer, and then you pay back the tax in your adult life.
Hmm.
Many people are like, oh, you get so much in Denmark. And I'm like, oh, if you do the math, it's quite fair. We pay around 50% in taxes. So
Hmm.
whatever we get is paid back later in life.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, it's then shared. Some people pay more tax than others. That's a whole different political story I'm not going into. So
Hmm.
for us, it was a sliding scale. We started on two income, went down, down, down. And at some point, we had to debate with ourselves if we should continue trying to get support. There is a fun thing about this welfare society that Denmark is that you also externalize a lot of the care. And as things are free, paid by from your taxes, it is very likely that you want to take you want to use that system.
Hmm.
It's like, I can put my child here in the daycare, it's free, then I can go to work, it makes sense. But it also makes it more difficult to make the choice of keeping your child at home, because it's more expensive to keep your child at home. So we decided to stop wanting to be taken care of by the state and
Hmm.
taking care of ourselves.
Hmm.
So it was a sliding scale, starting from two income down on some of these support systems we have in Denmark, where you are paid to have your child at home. My wife had cancer, so she was on sick leave for a long time. She had a lot of long-term effects of the chemo, and got some support after that. And at some point, we just stopped up and said, hey, we can most likely get longer term support for Cecilia, but then she would need to walk around with an identification of, I'm a long term patient. And
Hmm.
that is not a way to live. You
No.
don't want to identify with being sick just to get money from the state.
Right.
So, and this is the reason I'm mentioning this is it's kind of key in, when you live in a welfare society like Denmark. If you want to take control, you also need to be the ones who are in control of your own income and your life, and you're not outsourcing all these things you were used to.
Right. Right. Well,
Yeah.
that's very different than it is here, but very interesting. Yeah. So, did you have to? It sounds like you did a lot of shifting and rethinking of priorities. And did you have to downsize too? I know that's another thing that happens here in the States. People just say, "Okay, we're going to do without this car and this and that and the other thing in order to afford to homeschool."
And no, actually
Ah,
not.
good.
My philosophy was that I just needed to make more money, and I made more money. Um, so we lived in Copenhagen. Copenhagen is a biking city. Everything is within biking distance. It's a very tiny, wonderful city.
Hmm.
Um, I could commute to work on bike every day, and we didn't have any car. It didn't make sense to have a car in Copenhagen because everything was, as I said, within walking or biking distance. So
Hmm.
that was not an issue for us. We ended up taking driver's license when we, and be prepared here for a shock. I was 37 when I took my driver's license. I have never had use for it before
No
as
need.
being a teen. No need at all. But then when we took it, we went on a 100-day road trip through Europe, and that was fantastic. So we decided to pursue the full-time traveling dreams. So no, it wasn't a need. We had a nice house. We could take care of our
Mhm,
expenses, but it was not what we wanted in the long run. We
mhm,
wanted more freedom because I was also due to be in an office space all the time. If we wanted to have that nice house, then I had to be outside of the family
mhm,
for these 8 hours a day. Denmark is again it's only 30, say a normal working week is 37 and a half hour. And most people would find it luxurious, where I often hear business people are like, oh, then I work 60 hours a week, like it's a badge of honor
that's
not to
right.
be present with your family. I don't find it a badge of honor. I
Hmm.
think that if you work 60 hours a week, then you should probably look into working smarter and not longer.
Get a
So
life.
yeah,
It's
get a
life
life.
isn't just
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
But certainly it's become that way in our society. So
yeah,
let's talk about that for a minute, because I know when I said that, I homeschool, unschool my children, everyone assumed, and I was working, that I was also somehow not doing enough, that I was, not being a man, because I was staying home, like, because we split shifts, my wife and I. So I would stay home with the kids when she worked, and vice versa. And how do I'm not sure that, I mean, culturally there are some big differences between the Danes and the Americans.
yeah.
So there's that. But I'm curious, did you have to deal with any of that criticism, and that you're not a
Um,
real man because you're staying home with your kids?
no, but my story is different as I first became a stay-at-home dad when we started full-time traveling.
Mm,
And I experienced a difference in the approach from other people around when we started full-time traveling. Before that, then we were often met by the notion that this homeschooling thing maybe was a little weird, it was uncommon, and people
mhm,
was like, "Oh, that's definitely not for me." To the story, I also need to mention that we were among the first 10 families in Denmark who homeschooled due to you can say, educational choice.
mhm,
Before that, we have had some religious groups homeschooling and people taking their child out of school for a year for traveling, etc.
mhm,
But for people who like really wanted to homeschool because or unschool because that is what they wanted, we were a very
mhm.
little crowd, so it was uncommon, unheard of. But then when we started traveling 7 years ago, then it shifted. Then people was more like, "Oh, that's fantastic! You are traveling full time. I have always dreamt about that. That sounds wonderful." So the whole perspective of what we did changed from being that's weird to what an adventure. So I
Uh,
might have seen something different if I had been a stay-at-home dad in Denmark.
mhm,
Uh, and I have friends who have the reversed order where it's the wife who's working and the dad who
mhm,
is a stay-at-home dad. They are
mhm.
very comfortable in their role and in their masculinity, but a lot of people, yeah, are a little stupid. So,
Yeah, it's one of
yeah,
those weird prejudices that we have. Um, One thing that before I get on other things, but just popped into my mind as you were just talking. One of the things that I when I first started working with John Holt in 1981, he was a big fan of the Danish school system, and my friend Aaron Falbell actually wrote his PhD dissertation on on a free school in Copenhagen, the Ny Lille Skole, I think it was called. And he graduated from MIT, the PhD on the basis of that. But and when we spoke, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, you had mentioned to me that, because I asked about the free schools, are they still free? And you said that it seemed like the Danish system was actually becoming more like the American system. Do you still feel that way? And if so, why do you think it's happening?
So I think that fear is what is happening in parents, fear and control. So what has happened in the Danish schools over the last 50 years is that if you turn back time around 40, 50 years ago, then the teachers were the one in control of what they wanted to teach. They had free hands, more or less.
Hmm.
There was some goals, but you trusted the teacher,
Exactly.
which gave a
Hmm.
relationship where the teacher could be more flowy in the way they educated. They could feel where the students were. They could do the projects they wanted to. Where today we have these common goals set by the state,
Hmm.
that, and it actually says what a student needs to have learned inside what week of the year, and it has become less free. You're also seeing a brain drain of teachers who are just leaving the schools in Denmark, who cannot work under this system. They feel restricted.
Hmm.
So a lot of my personal friends who I grew up with, who ended up becoming teachers, have left and are outside school now after being there for 20 years because it's too narrow for them. So something is happening. Um, and what I think is happening is this whole idea that everyone needs to learn the same thing at the same time. And that you need the way to make sure that people learn something is that you test it.
Hmm.
But it also comes from the parents, because I remember how it was when I had a girl in school, our oldest, as I said, and this was even a very free spirited school, very democratic, the Celestine Frenet
Hmm.
school in Copenhagen. I remember sitting at a teacher parent meeting, and she was in fourth grade, and they were saying, "Oh, she's so fantastic in the social life. We love having her here." And in Danish, or that's what we call it. It's like the literature, history, and stuff around the Danish language. She's on like seventh grade. That's fantastic. But on math, she's on second grade only. It, and I remember just like getting a heart attack as the parent, being all, but then you need to teach her. And I've since thought a lot about what happened in me. What happened in me was that I felt it was their responsibility what my child knew. And that is pretty wild that we as parents outsource the education of our children.
Hmm.
And how can I be sure on my child is learning anything unless they somehow show it to me? I think the whole system is wrong. But what I think is wrong is also, if you look at it historically, we lived in smaller local areas where I personally would have a relationship to the teacher. I
Hmm.
would know the teacher. My children would know the teacher. It would be my neighbor, maybe.
Hmm.
Uh, so I would have trust. There would be trust between me and the teacher, trust between my children and the teacher.
Hmm.
Today, people send their kids to a school where they don't know the teachers. They have no relationship to them.
Hmm.
So, as trust is not part of the dialogue or the issue at all, then what come in place instead is control.
Hmm.
And it is that I need to be sure as a parent that my child learned something. Ergo, I need the teachers to show me my child have learned something. So it's a circle, and we cannot blame the schools. We should also blame ourselves
Yes.
of handing our kids over to a system and us asking the teachers to take over the responsibility and in turn give us trust through a control system,
Hmm.
where I believe in trust, true trust, and love and connection.
Hmm.
So that's where I think the big difference is. It's the fear It's the lack of personal relationship, and it's the lack of trust between whoever you decide to outsource your child's education to, if you are deciding to use that
Mhm.
system.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was remembering a story you told me years ago. You were worried about, I think it was your son or maybe it was your daughter. They weren't reading, well enough. And you went to the school, you talked to the teacher, and the teacher's, his or her response really surprised me in a very pleasant way, which was, Jesper, relax. No child graduates from the school without learning to read. Yeah, and
Yeah.
to me, there you are saying, "Oh, he's in the fifth grade. There's everything in the fifth grade level," and they're like, "Relax."
Yeah. No,
Oh,
it was not the reading, but the math, and with my daughter in this
math.
school. But
All
yeah,
right, but I mean,
but
if you have
I
the
was
general
terrified
outline.
back then. I was terrified back then because of it. For
Mhm,
me, it was really weird, and I got almost angry at the teachers, being like, "Who are you to patronize me?" Kind
mhm,
of.
mhm,
I was immature on many levels, and lack of understanding what learning is back then.
mhm.
And that's why me and my wife also today have a weekly podcast where I try to make up for all I didn't know by sharing what I have learned now, and hopefully other dads out there will not make the same mistake as I did. I
Yeah.
ruined I ruined my son, who is now 19 years old. I ruined his lust of wanting to learn to read, because I asked my wife when we started to homeschool. Then my insecurity and my lack of trust in unschooling and homeschooling made me ask my wife to kind of force him. I was not strict, but I was talking with my wife, and said to her, I really, if I need to trust this, I need you to teach him math and Danish. You need to teach him to learn to read and write, and otherwise I cannot support this weird thing called homeschooling. It's not for me. I do not like it. I do not trust it. And the result was that she put pressure on our son. There was a shitty dialogue between me and my wife around all this. It was not happy times. And my son didn't like being pushed, so he decided he didn't want to learn to read, which ended up taking 6 or 7 years before he wanted
Mhm,
to learn to read. He was 13, and I put the pressure on my wife to pressure my son when he was 6 years old.
mhm,
Today, he's an avid reader, read giant books in multiple languages.
mhm,
But oh my God, I am so embarrassed and sad that I ruined my son's lust of wanting to learn to read. It's a mistake many of us do
mhm.
when we go down this path. It is just terrible. And I hope no other dad will make the same mistake. And that's why I'm open and honest about the mistakes I made, because
Mhm,
the pressure is the opposite of supporting someone in their learning journey.
mhm. So tell me how you turned your experience learning to be a full-time homeschooler father into your consulting business, jesperconrad.com.
Yes, I will. So when we decide, well, let me start another place. So after we had our kids at home, and I had came to peace with the whole unschooling process, I've understood it, I've seen the results. Then our reality was that we had this 7 year gap between our oldest, who is today 27, 26, and our oldest son, who is today 19. Our daughter wanted to pursue an education in writing. She got accepted at a very fancy children book author
Mhm,
university thing, and she's today a published author. But we, of course, needed to support her in this process.
mhm,
So we could see, okay, when she's finished, then our son will be 12, and we have two other kids who are younger. We have four in total. So before our son will maybe want to go to high school or some higher education, we have a 5-year gap where we could do something. And we looked at what is holding us in one place in Denmark. The thing that was holding us in one place in Denmark at that point when our daughter would be finished was that I went to work every day. We had a big ass house. I went to work every day. So the reality was the only reason we were in Denmark was that I had a day job where I needed to go to an office. So back in 15, when we looked a couple of years ahead and saw this future in front of us, we said, okay, if we want to do something different, there's this 5-year window where we at least can try to do something. So we had 3 years ahead of us where our daughter needed to finish this education she was on. And then I started trying to find clients online. It went slowly in the start, and it took 3 years to build up an income. And it was, of course, not the most fun 3 years because I had a full-time day job and I worked in the morning before that with clients and in the evening afterwards, which meant there was a higher pressure on the family. There was less me time, my time with my family. So what we did to support my wife so she shouldn't stand with it all alone was that we opened our house to workawayers. There's something called workaway.info where young people travel the world and can come, and the agreement is they work 20 hours a week at your place and you give them food and lodging. It was the most perfect, wonderful opportunity for us. We wanted to travel. And one way you can start your travels if you can't travel is to invite travelers to your home, because traveling is most often about meeting people, engaging with people, learning stuff. So our children got a lot of language. My wife got support. We got support in the family with being one extra adult, even though it was a young adult in the start of their 20s. And they loved it, coming to Copenhagen, living in the middle of Copenhagen, and just being able to enjoy life and staying with a family. So it took 3 years. I was lucky to get an international client, and it was actually due to homeschooling. As in Germany, I know this is a long circular story, but in Germany, it's illegal to homeschool. So a lot of Germans, they moved to Denmark to want to homeschool. And one day, a family stood in our living room in Denmark because they knew we homeschooled, and they had asked us if they could come and listen to us. It was a German-American couple, and we told them about how it was to homeschool in Denmark, the rules and everything, because we are paying back to the people who have walked before us, the people who gave us a lot of their hours telling about homeschooling. When new people want to know about homeschooling, we share with them. That's what I love about this community, is that you need someone to learn from, but at some point you're the one who knows stuff, then pass it on. So this family, German-American couple, was there, and we talked with them. They were super nice. And you know how dads are. If you don't know what to talk about, you're like, oh, so what do you do for work? And it showed that the dad, Chris, was a New York Times best-selling author of a book called The Passion Test. And they had made a whole coaching business where they help people becoming passion test facilitators. He had this company together with his ex-wife, and he wanted to go in a new direction. They were super good friends, so not like ex-wife in a bad sense.
Right.
They were business partners, and he wanted to go in a new direction, but didn't want to leave his business partner out of the loop of someone who knew about online marketing. And I was like, but Chris, that's my work. I know about online marketing. So for him, it was a gift, because he could go to his business partner and say, I will continue in this path now, but here's Jesper. He will be able to help you. And that was how I got my first international client. And since then, it has fallen in place. And so my income is divided between that I help companies, primarily nonprofit or sole business owners and therapists with their online marketing. And then I've, in the last couple of years, also started helping dads out there, because I think I've seen a lot of us dads who go down this path of homeschooling and unschooling. We do not know enough. We do not have someone to confide with. We do not have someone where we easily can say, hey, my wife said this to me. She wants to do this weird thing called homeschooling. I think she's weird. What do you think? And my answer would be, that's what I thought, but she's right. And don't tell her that, but accept it, go down that path. And then I've also, since last year, worked together with another of these wonderful nonprofit projects. I work together with Gordon Neufeld, who have the Neufeld Institute, who have written this wonderful book called Hold On to Your Kids. So I'm moving my business more in the area of supporting my mission, the mission of helping parents to parent in a more natural way,
Mm-hmm.
where I see the whole attachment parenting is in good connection with the homeschooling and unschooling mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's the same, just some of it is parenting and some of it is a philosophy about how you learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another thing that's embedded in what you're saying is community. And I love how, your openness creates the community. Your invitation to have people come to your home, to visit you, your willingness to meet people as you travel. I mean, this is something that I think is lost because in school where you might get an annual school trip, but it's not the same.
No.
So you're really kind of like reinventing society, because we've been sectioned off by school and work from everybody, to the point where, well, when the Industrial Revolution happened, the factories took all the men and women,
Yeah.
and the moms and dads were gone. So the solution was to create schools, and put them in. It wasn't because they wanted to teach kids skills or to make them smarter. It's like we have to house them and then, and put them to work some way. And that's, and we wound up there. But one of the things that your life and work has led to is fascinating to me is this. And again, to me, it's like, to me, it's the unschooling ethos, or the homeschool. We're self-reliant. You talked very eloquently about this earlier in our conversation, but now you're taking your experiences, and you and Cecilia have started a thing called Worldschooling Village, and that's
Yes.
taking place in October of 2025, right? Could you describe
Yes.
what Worldschooling Village is?
I can give my best try. So
I know it's organic, which is another thing I
it
love
is
about it.
organic.
It
No,
feels
no.
organic
The
in real life.
idea sprung from having attended a lot of different world schooling pop-ups, World School Summit. There, for many people out there, they know of Lainey Liberty, who
Mhm.
had this famous TED talk years ago. She, in a period, created some World School Summits, which was a conference, a summit with a lot of talks. And what was really good about that is if you take the conference part aside, then it's the connection created between
Mhm.
people. It's the same with Rachel Carlson, the Carlson family. I'm very grateful for all what they have done. They have created something called the World School Pop-up Hubs, where people are meeting for 1 week in a city, and then they are exploring the city together in that week. Growing out of both the World School Summit and the World School Pop-up Hubs have come in me and Cecilia this wish of, hey, it is good what they are doing, but for us, it's not enough. 1 week of community is good, but it's like dipping your toe in something wonderful and then being rushed off to something new. We
Mhm.
have been full-time traveling now for 7 years. For us, community is one of the most important parts of what we are doing. We have tried all the different things. We co-live with people, share an apartment. We have this 7 meter van I'm in right now. Right now, I'm parked outside a vacation house where my sister-in-law is with her family. So for us, we travel with a guest house, you can say. So if people invite us by, we can just stay there if we like them, and if we don't, we can drive off.
Mhm.
So what we wanted to create was what we felt was missing in the community. and it is time to connect.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it is more about facilitating the space of where people can meet. And our angle on it is a focus on families with teens, because if you are a long-time traveler like us, you can see in the community that often people, oh, we world school when our kids are 1, 2, 3 years old or 5. And it is more the parent project where they love to go off to exotic countries, and this is good enough for the children. Absolutely. No child needs a lot of giant community when they're small. They need their mom and dad
Mm-hmm.
and the small family that is around them, and maybe someone to play to with from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't need to be big when you're 3 years old. You don't need to be a kindergarten with thousands of other children. Your family is more than enough. But when you grow into the teen years, life
Mm-hmm.
shifts. You want something else. You want a young adult life. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why we are facilitating this space where families with teens can come. It is, of course, families. So we have children in this event in October, there's children from age 4 to 19 or 20. But with a majority, I think it's 20 or 30 of the kids are around teenagers, and they just mingle and have fun. So basically, we are trying to recreate a village square where we are saying, hey, we think this is the anchor point, and then we find a place that needs to, there's a lot of logistic involved. So the city we choose needs to be interesting enough, big enough to have enough rental apartments for families, because it is for 1 month between 20 and 30 families or more will move into the same neighborhood. So there needs to be tourism enough for this to be possible.
Mm-hmm.
We also want, if possible, a campsite nearby to the one who is van lifing and can want to do that part of life
Mm-hmm.
where they can commute in. And we also want an area where we primarily, what we're searching for is a park where the teens can hang out, play spike ball. If there's street workout, wonderful. If there's a basket lane, wonderful. So they can have a young adult free spare time. And we also need a playground because it's families. A lot of them have smaller children that more want to hang out on the playground. And if there's some table for us old folks, all the parents we can hang out with, then that's perfect as well. So we have found that in Tarragona, we have found that in Copenhagen, we have found that in Prague, and we are opening up for tickets for Prague and Copenhagen for next spring. And then basically people just hang out for a month. We then also add more than just the hanging out. We facilitate a nice party for the teens because that's one of the fun things. We also do something we call suit up Sundays. It is mostly for fun because if you are a full-time traveler, nomad, there's not many occasions for you to put on a nice shirt or a nice dress or something. So we invented Suit Up Sunday, which was like, hey, shouldn't we try to look good and get out of our our leisure suits here? So we just dress up for fun on Sundays sometimes, and it's really nice. Get out of all the homey clothes, and it's a good thing. Then we go to the secondhand shops, and you buy something fun that could be fun to wear for the Sunday. And then we do the teen party. We love to do hikes as a family, also because it's a really, really good way to get into dialogue and talking with others. So we will facilitate some hikes, and then we do a conference part because we think there needs to be some wisdom sharings. So we are taking and giving honor to Lainey Liberty and Rachel with their events in this terms of, I think the conference part from the World School Summit was fantastic. I want to pass that on. And I think the community that was created around what Rachel created was fantastic. And for everyone who just want to dip their toe, go explore worldschoolpubuphub.com where you can see where Rachel's events are taking place. For us, we just want to slow down. We don't want to travel fast. We want to have time also for relationships to be explored among the teens. And time to meet maybe a life partner or a life friend or whatever. So it's a way for us to, yeah, create what wasn't there, what our children missed. And instead of looking for it, we just looked at each other and say, maybe we should just create it. So this is what we did.
I love that attitude, and I think that that's so vital. I mean, you're also modeling that behavior for your children, and I think that that's really important because I mean, AI is threatening to take away all these entry level jobs and stuff, but
Yep.
at least our children know how to react, how to create their own reality, I guess, because you want a community, but there's no community. How do we create a
We
community?
just created.
You
We
that
actually just we did the same here in Denmark. We had it was too much. We gave 7 talks in a week, public talks, me and Cecilia, and gave them away for free because I was lacking that this was a thing in Denmark. There's a lot of meetups, but there's not a lot of people sharing knowledge on how it is to do what we are doing and have been doing for the last 15 years. So I just wrote into a lot of groups on Facebook and saying, "Hey, we are back visiting Denmark, and we are open for giving up some free talks. If you can arrange a place, we will come and give a talk." My
Mhm,
goal with it was that I've seen that people like to meet around something.
mhm,
And I'm fine with going and saying, okay, then I can have the flag of being that something you can meet around.
mhm,
But it is not for me. What I preferred most was not listening to myself talk. It was the way we created the event was half an hour before the event. Then there was me, people could just come, hang out. Then me and Cecilia gave a talk on how it has been to go through having a kid not in school and finished being not in school. I mean, 2 of our children have never been to school and is finished in never being to school. Their 10 years of never being to school is done, and sharing how that is. Then a potluck together. And that was the greatest part for me. It was the chit chatting and seeing people meet, seeing connection being created.
mhm.
And that part of it is what I like. It's the hanging out,
Yeah.
talking, sharing experiences.
Well, what you've done is you've created what a sociologist named Ray Oldenburg called a third place. He said that we need home, work. Those are the first two places, but then we need third places in order to be fully human. And those are pubs, bars, grocery stores,
Yeah.
plazas, parks.
And I think that as the world is getting more atheist-sized, if that is a word, that we are removing religion somehow, and or religion has less of a hand in the community. In Denmark, our public church is it has become ritualized and formal. People are attending in Easter and Christmas, and then they get married in the church, and their children maybe get baptized, but in the Christian communion instead. There's no community around the churches in Denmark anymore. We have some free churches, uh, but we visited the States last year, and I saw the community around the church.
Mhm,
But not everyone wants to meet around a religion. And
mhm,
all fairness to that, people should meet around what they want to. But as the churches have less of a hold in people, we forgot the community.
mhm,
And I've seen now that the community is getting commercialized.
mhm,
So I miss these come and let's meet around something where you don't need to pay an entry ticket to get to meet around something.
right.
Uh, like real community for the sake of community, public potlucks.
Mhm,
Let's meet here, dinner.
mhm,
And but then, of course, I understand people who take money for their work, as we need to do with the Worldschooling Village. First, I just wanted to do it for free, but then I realized how much work there is in facilitating, holding this
mhm,
space, talking with all the people who want to attend. and people also is writing like, so how's the traffic? Can I take a bus? And you're like, hey, you're a grown up. It's not
Right.
my job to tell you. But we end up using at least a month of work time in
Oh yeah.
preparing each
You're the
of these.
organizer.
Yeah, I would love to do it for free, but we need to
Mhm.
have a little price tag on. But we keep it so low so that single moms with a child traveling still can attend because
Well,
it's not a money project.
yeah. So on that note, will you tell us about Tarragona? Why did you choose that place, and what makes you excited about it?
Friends.
Mm,
So we had been living in the area. We drove our big red bus we bought. That was our ticket out to the world. Give me a second. There's a big tractor working outside, and I needed to close the door as I got distracted by the noise. So it is 1 hour south of Barcelona. We had lived in the area on and off. We had a bus. We parked at an animal sanctuary. And some years ago, a family who lived 20 minutes from where we were parked, they were like, oh, let's meet. But it was during the pandemic, so there was not a lot of meet and greet going on in that period. And then we, this March, spent a month in Barcelona and they came and visited us. It's an American family who is living in Tarragona with their 5 children, and they're just wonderful homeschooled, unschooled children.
Mhm.
You know, when you meet and the kids just play board games and have fun and play werewolf all day, and it is really wonderful. And then we wanted to see them again. And they haven't had a lot of community. So we said to them, hey, shouldn't we create something together in the fall?
Mhm.
And they were like, yeah, that could be fun. And then I was thinking, okay, they want community. Let's give it to them. So from being one homeschooling family in that area, living there alone, more or less for 5 years, having difficulty finding community there, we are now bringing, I think we will be 25, 30 world schooling families, and they will be our local anchor.
Mhm.
The city is chosen also because it is stunning. There's an amphitheater, it's an old Roman outpost. There is, I mean, there are buildings older than America. And not
Sure.
America, it's the USA. Sorry. Yeah, not America. That's a bold.
I know,
But
right?
yeah, but older than USA. And I mean, the public parks and places, buildings have been there for 500 years or more, and it's just a stunning city to walk around in. It is right on the meridian on the coast, so there's the beach. 10
Mm.
minutes walk to the beach, 10 minutes walk to the park we hang out in. And then October in Spain is quite nice because then it's not so hot any longer and the water is still warm. So it's actually, we prefer late September, October, and November in Spain versus the summer in Spain where the sun is too hot.
Mhm. I know when I lived in Ireland, it seemed like everybody wanted to go to Spain in the summer or on their vacations.
Yeah, but that's one of the things I actually talked a lot about during this last week on our Cecilia's and mine talk, is that I've been pondering about life as a homeschooler, how much it changes, and how big a decision it is to send a child to school. One of the things that happens is that you throw down a very big anchor in your life where someone needs to go to a place for 10 years. But it also set some circular motions happening, which is you need to live in an area where you can commute to the school. So where you live is based on the school, or maybe you choose a school based on where you live. But then you need to be able to commute to work. Then it also involves all the way into when your children need to go to bed, when they need to get up. You need to do homework with them. You have something called weekends, which luckily us full-time nomadic homeschooling people, I don't know what
Three
weekend
days a
is
weekend.
anymore. No, I don't have any weekends. I just have life. And
Right.
then you can also only travel on public holidays. which is one of the fun thing about being full-time is I would never travel to Spain in July. It is the most dry, hot, annoying period where you don't want to be outside because it's too hot. And when people come from the UK or Ireland, they will get burned by the sun so fast because they come from the Nordic countries to a place where it's just too hot. So, I mean, I understand how it was when I started to travel and came to more southern countries. I was in the sun all the time. And I was like, why are they walking in the shades? I didn't understand it. But then it was like my inner battery of sun was filled at some point after some years. So now I walk in the shades like any other normal southern person there. It's like the sun is out. Let's walk in the shade. We don't want to get burned.
Live and learn,
Or I'm only
right?
there in the spring. Yeah.
Right. Well, I just love, your openness towards life and learning, and it's infectious. And I really think that, that's the key here. It's not following the curriculum of walking down the path that someone set 40 years ago or even longer. It's like you wake up and you say, I want to have a community. I enjoy Spain. How can we do this? And more power to you and Cecilia and to everyone like you who's becoming self-reliant and just saying, no, I don't have to wait for the government or for some nonprofit or some millionaire, billionaire to give me money so I can have a conference. We could do a conference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just mad in figuring out everything. But I think that's one of the really big issues you come to after some years of home educating and taking home the responsibility is that you stop outsourcing. You stop
Yeah.
outsourcing your life, the care, the
Mhm.
responsibility. And one of the things I also addressed in these talks Cecilia and I have had is that I can see how when I started my homeschooling life 15 years ago, when our child didn't want to, or when we started having them at home, and then later when we started homeschooling them, in the start, it was like I needed crutches of aggression against the society, the system. I was very focused on everything I thought was wrong with the school, with the system, with society. And I think it's because when you remove yourself from the norm, from what is normal, there's a big, big like magnet inside of you that needs to be dragged away from it. And it's easier to do if you can criticize where you were instead of focusing on where you go. And in the start, when I thought about this, I was like, well, that's actually a little immature that I need to criticize where I come from before I can enjoy where I'm going. Now I just accept it as a part of normal life. I've seen it in people when they want to change where they live. They get annoyed with their house. I see it in people who stop a relationship. If the relationship isn't the right one for them any longer, there's no reason to start hating what you once loved. If something else is better in your life, it's with work. I've seen it that in the start, we need to define what is wrong. And then we have these mental crutches of what is wrong. And we actually walk around. And if people ask, so your kid is not at home, it's not at school, are you homeschooling? Then we give them a 3 hour lesson of what is wrong with the school system and yada, 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 instead of just polite answer, yes,
Mhm.
they're at home, life is good. And
Yeah.
then telling about the good life.
Right. No need
And
to be defensive. Yeah.
no, but I've just seen it. It's a normal process
All
of
right.
dragging yourself away from the norm. And what I'm more and more fascinated by now, and it's also through the work I do with Gordon Neufeld, is instead of looking at norm and normal, I look at what is natural. And yesterday in the talk Cecilia and I gave, I also said to them, you know what? I've never seen a 1 year old crawling down to the institution because saying, Mom and Dad, if it could talk at that point, Mom and Dad, I don't want to be together with you. I want to be somewhere with some other people now for 8 hours. No
Mhm.
child have ever done that.
Right.
And I mean, no 3 year old would walk alone to an institution and not be together
Mhm.
with their parents. I looked the numbers up, and there's something fun about how quickly our sense of what is normal changes. In Denmark, what is called nursery, it would be called in English, where between they are 0 and 3 years old,
Mhm.
nursery homes. 50 years ago, 5% were in nursery homes. Now it's 95%.
95. Wow.
Yes. So if you look back at 50 years ago, if you sent your child away when it was 1 year old, you would be the weird one.
Hmm.
Today, when you are not sending your child away, you're the weird one. That's 50 years.
Right.
And there's another place, there's a place in Copenhagen, and very old kindergarten, where it is, I love the words on the wall there. It's the name of the house. It's what kindergarten was called in Denmark before they were called kindergartens. Back in the days, it was called a child asylum. It was a place children could go if there wasn't anyone who could care for them.
Child asylum.
So it was actually a place for children who were in need of care because maybe the
Hmm.
mom was died, maybe the dad died, and the mom needed to work. So it
Hmm.
was an asylum to help the needed. Now it is also close to 100% in Denmark who
Right.
is in the kindergartens.
Right.
So I hope that we start focusing on natural instead of
Hmm.
normal, because normal changes all the time.
Right. That's right. Well, that's a really nice observation, and I think a good place to end. Was I really think that what you've said is been, and what you're doing by your example, I think is really important because educators are still arguing, what's the best way to teach reading? What's the best way to test? What's the best way to live is what we're looking at. And,
Yeah.
and you're figuring that out, and everyone's going to figure out differently because everyone has different issues and stuff. But what I like is that you're inviting people to share that with,
I
and
would actually like to defend the school system on a finishing note. If
yes,
people asked me to take care of 28 children I didn't have a personal relationship to, and they said to me, Jesper, you need to teach them this from this period to this period. Inside these weeks, they need to have learned this. I would invent school,
exactly. Right.
because it's a challenge you cannot solve. I
Hmm.
cannot have a personal relationship with 28
Hmm.
children. I've done the math of how few are. It is something like 20 to 30 minutes per child you can have one to one
Hmm.
if you have so many students during an 8 hour day. So the people who are teachers out there who might listen to it, I have a lot of love and respect for you. It's a very difficult challenge. And
Hmm.
if people want to have outsourced the education of their child, of course, I know there's democratic schools and wonderful projects out there, but for public schooling, I think I
Hmm.
would do the same. I would ask people to shut up, sit down, and follow what I say, because there's no way you can handle that task if you're one person with responsibility for
Hmm.
28 people.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is, let not bash them too much, because it's a really difficult challenge.
Hmm. No, I agree, and and oddly enough, for the last 20 years, my ex-wife worked as a school teacher, so after we homeschooled our kids, so it's yeah, I have sympathy, but I also and I like I've been saying over and over, like you doing something. I've also seen teachers. I mean that's how John Holt and John Gatto, so many teachers who go off to write these best-selling books about how they can no longer be teachers,
Yeah.
because the system, it's not the people, it's the system. The idea that we can grade your life and your knowledge by the month by the age of how many months you've lived. And that's crazy, you know?
Yeah. And one note on that is Malcolm Gladwell. If you have read any of his
Mhm.
books, he has written a book called Outliers, where he describes how in Canada they have researched and figured out that a lot of the professional hockey players are born in the first quarter of the year. And for a long time, there was like, that is kind of weird. So if you want to be a professional hockey player or want a child that should be a professional hockey player, make sure your child is born in the first quarter of the year. And why is that? This is because schools are not based on your child's age, but is a from the fall to the next spring period. So, but in Denmark and in Canada, I don't know how the system is in the States, you enter school the year you turn 6.
Mhm.
So if you're a January child, then you are in a then you are most likely more developed than a November December child.
Mhm.
Which mean if you start to extracurriculum hockey or something when you're 6 years
Mhm.
old, then you are almost 1 year bigger than a December child. So you will be bigger, stronger, faster,
Mhm.
which makes that the coach sees this child. They are in the same year, but they are not the same.
Right.
But they then give them a positive focus because, oh, this kid is so good at skating, he's so
Right.
strong, etc. Which year after year of positive focus have a difference.
Yes.
It makes the difference. It actually makes them become better and better. And the better they become, the more positive focus they get. And
Mhm.
in the end, they become professional hockey players. And there's this group of hockey players that are born in the spring and or early winter.
Right.
And it's the
Interesting.
same with the schools, most likely, that if you are born in the fall or December, then
Mhm.
you are the youngest, the smallest in class. You're
Mhm.
probably less developed. Will your teacher see this difference, or will they
And it's
treat
all,
you like a group?
yeah, and
Yeah.
it, and that's certainly true. And it's also true that, your social capital, a child that whose parents, live in a city or can take them to want to take them to museums or in
Yeah.
concerts and stuff versus someone who can't. I mean, they're gonna have different interests and abilities as a
Yeah.
result of that, and trying to smooth all that out by saying, well, we'll teach them all the same thing at the same time. And that doesn't make sense. I mean, you're not
No,
addressing real issues here.
no. Also because I have 4 children, and as simple as I was like, our system is girl, boy, girl, boy. That's how our children came. So I got my first son, and the next son is something like, is he 7? Maybe he's 6 or 7 years younger. So I was like, they're boys. They must be the same. Oh my God, they're different. They
Yeah.
have different passions and interests. They learn in different ways. One
Hmm.
of them, if you try to guide him too much, he goes the other direction.
Hmm.
One of them is very musical gifted and interested. Another one is very deep into psychology. And they're just, it would be easier if our girls was alike and our boys was alike. Then I could understand it. Now they're all individuals. And I'm like, oh my God, 4 different children, 4 different
Right.
approaches.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 4 different learning styles. They learn different.
Hmm.
But well, basically the learning style is the same. Whatever you're passionate about, that's the learning. That's what you're doing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you
And
so much for your time, Jesper. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to hearing more about Tarragona,